The words "you're completely useless" still echo in my mind 3 months later. But what my daughter-in-law didn't expect was that those cruel words would cost her $1 million inheritance. I'm Vera Blackwood, and this is how one insult changed everything. You know, people always ask me how I built a successful business from scratch. The truth is, I never planned to become an entrepreneur. 25 years ago, I was just a grieving widow with a mortgage, a 10-year-old son, and absolutely no idea how I was going to survive. My husband Jake died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me with more bills than savings and a son who needed stability. The life insurance barely covered the funeral costs. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in Willow Creek, Texas, staring at a pile of overdue notices, wondering if I should just sell the house and move back to my mother's place in Oklahoma. But something inside me refused to give up. Jake had always said I had a gift with plants. Our yard was the envy of the neighborhood, and I'd helped dozens of friends with their landscaping over the years. So I took our old pickup truck, bought some basic tools with my last $300, and started knocking on doors. Blackwood Gardens began in that beat-up Ford with rust spots and a tailgate that wouldn't stay closed. I did everything myself at first: mowing, planting, pruning, even hauling mulch that weighed more than I did. My hands were constantly dirty. My back ached every night. But slowly, clients started calling. Word spread in our small town. People appreciated that I showed up on time, worked twice as hard as anyone expected, and genuinely cared about making their properties beautiful. Within 2 years, I had enough regular clients to hire my first employee. Within 5 years, I was bidding on commercial contracts. The growth wasn't easy. I made mistakes that cost thousands of dollars. I trusted the wrong people and learned painful lessons about contracts and cash flow. But I also discovered something powerful about myself. I was a natural leader. People respected my work ethic and followed my vision. My son Devin grew up watching me build this empire. He spent countless summer days riding along in the truck, learning to identify plants and operate equipment. I always assumed he'd want to continue what I started. After all, this business would be his inheritance, his security, his future. But Devin had different dreams. He excelled in school, particularly with computers, and earned a full scholarship to study computer science at the University of Texas. I was proud of his academic success, even though part of me hoped he'd come back to Willow Creek after graduation. Instead, he took a job with a tech company in Austin and rarely visited. Our relationship became limited to holiday phone calls and the occasional weekend visit when his schedule allowed. I told myself this was normal. Young people needed to spread their wings and explore the world. Everything changed when Devin married Camille 8 years ago. She was beautiful, polished, and had very clear opinions about small-town life. From our first meeting, she made subtle comments about my little gardening business and how quaint it was that I still got my hands dirty at my age. I tried to like her. I really did. I wanted my son to be happy, and if Camille made him happy, I was willing to overlook her condescending attitude. But as years passed, her comments became less subtle and more cutting. Meanwhile, my relationship with my neighbors, the Rourke family, deepened into something beautiful. Grace Rourke and I became best friends shortly after she moved in next door 15 years ago. She was a single mother raising her son Finn, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. I often watched Finn after school when Grace's shifts ran late. Finn was everything I'd hoped Devin would be regarding the business. Even as a young teenager, he showed genuine interest in my work. He'd ask detailed questions about plant care, equipment maintenance, and client relationships. When he turned 16, I offered him a part-time job, and he jumped at the opportunity. Watching Finn work was like seeing a younger version of myself. He arrived early, stayed late, and approached every task with enthusiasm and pride. Other employees noticed his dedication. Clients remembered his name and specifically requested him for their projects. He absorbed information like a sponge and never made the same mistake twice. Devin, on the other hand, seemed increasingly distant from everything related to Willow Creek. His visits became shorter and less frequent. When he did come home, Camille would spend the entire time complaining about the heat, the bugs, the lack of sophisticated restaurants, or whatever else didn't meet her Austin standards. Still, I held on to hope that maybe Devin would eventually see the value in what I'd built. Blackwood Gardens wasn't just a business. It was my legacy, my life's work, my contribution to our community. We employed 15 people, supported their families, and had contracts with every major business and municipality in 3 counties. The company's success exceeded my wildest dreams. We maintained the grounds for the county courthouse, 3 shopping centers, 2 schools, and dozens of upscale residential properties. Our annual revenue topped $1 million, and our reputation for quality work and reliability was unmatched in the region. But success brought unexpected challenges, particularly from my own family. Camille began making increasingly pointed suggestions about my retirement. She'd send me articles about the benefits of senior living communities and the importance of letting go of stressful responsibilities. "You've worked so hard for so many years," she'd say with fake concern. "Don't you think you deserve to relax and enjoy your golden years?" These conversations always left me feeling defensive and frustrated. At 62, I felt stronger and sharper than ever. My business required strategic thinking, problem-solving, and leadership skills that I'd spent decades developing. The idea of abandoning everything to play bingo and attend craft classes felt like a slow death. Grace understood my frustration perfectly. During our evening walks, I'd vent about Camille's latest passive-aggressive comments and Devin's growing detachment from the family business. Grace always listened patiently and offered the kind of honest perspective that only a true friend can provide. "Vera," she'd say, "you can't force someone to value what you've built, but you also can't let other people's limitations diminish your own worth." Her words proved prophetic in ways neither of us could have imagined. The tension in my family reached a breaking point last month when Camille started becoming more aggressive about her retirement campaign. She began openly questioning my decision-making abilities and suggesting that managing a business was becoming too much for someone my age. These attacks felt particularly cruel because I knew my mind was as sharp as ever. I could recite every client's preferences, every employee's strengths and weaknesses, every piece of equipment's maintenance schedule. I negotiated contracts, resolved conflicts, and made strategic decisions daily. The business was thriving under my leadership. But Camille's constant undermining began affecting my confidence. I started second-guessing decisions that would have been automatic just months earlier. The stress of family conflict was taking a toll on my health and happiness. Looking back now, I realized that period was preparing me for the confrontation that would change everything. The seeds of my eventual decision were already planted. I just didn't know it yet. What I did know was that something had to change. I couldn't continue living with this constant criticism and disrespect from my own daughter-in-law, especially with my son's silent approval of her behavior. The explosion was coming. I could feel it building like a thunderstorm on the horizon. And when it finally arrived 3 months ago, it would force me to make the most important decision of my entire life. Tuesday, July 15th. I remember the exact date because it's burned into my memory like a brand. I was in my kitchen making my famous peach cobbler when I heard car doors slam in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Devin and Camille walking toward my front door, and something about their body language made my stomach clench with dread. Camille was carrying a manila folder that looked official and important. Devin walked slightly behind her, his shoulders tense in that way that told me he was preparing for an unpleasant conversation. They weren't here for a social visit. "Hi, Mom," Devin said when I opened the door, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. That should have been my first warning. "We need to talk about your future," Camille announced, before even saying hello. She brushed past me into the living room like she owned the place, that folder clutched in her manicured hands like a weapon. "My future?" I followed them, wiping flour from my hands on my apron. "What about it?" Instead of answering, Camille spread the contents of that folder across my coffee table with the precision of a lawyer presenting evidence. Glossy brochures for retirement communities, pamphlets about assisted living facilities, articles about the warning signs that elderly people need professional care. My blood pressure spiked immediately. What is this supposed to be? "Mom, sit down," Devin said gently, still avoiding eye contact. "We're worried about you." "Worried about what exactly?" I remained standing, crossing my arms. "I'm perfectly fine," Camille laughed, a sharp sound without any humor. "Define fine, Vera. You're 62 years old, living alone in a house that's too big for you, running a business that's become too demanding for someone your age." "Too demanding?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I built that business from nothing. It's the most successful landscaping company in 3 counties. "That's exactly the problem," Camille shot back, warming up to her argument. "You're clinging to something that's beyond your capabilities now. Look at these places." She gestured to the brochures. "Sunset Manor has a beautiful garden where you could enjoy plants without the stress of running a company. Golden Years Village offers structured activities with people your own age." I stared at those brochures in disbelief. "People my age? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Camille said with exaggerated patience, "that your friendships with people like Grace and her son are inappropriate. You're trying to stay young by surrounding yourself with younger people, but it's not healthy." The attack on Grace hit me like a physical blow. Grace is my best friend. Finn is like a second son to me. "That's the problem," Camille's voice rose. "You're living in some fantasy where you think you're still capable of making important decisions. Meanwhile, strangers are influencing you more than your own family." Devin finally spoke up. "Mom, we just think it might be time to consider slowing down. You've worked so hard for so many years. Don't you want to relax?" I turned to face my son directly. "Devin, do you think I'm incapable of running my own business?" He hesitated just long enough to break my heart. I think maybe the stress is getting to you. You seem more tired lately, more scattered." "Scattered?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I manage 15 employees, coordinate dozens of projects, maintain relationships with over 100 clients, and handle all the financial and legal aspects of a $1 million business. How exactly is that scattered?" Camille jumped back in. "Because you're 62, your reflexes are slower, your memory isn't what it used to be, and you're one accident away from a lawsuit that could destroy everything." "My memory is perfect," I snapped. "I can tell you every client's preferences, every employee's schedule, every piece of equipment we own, and when it needs maintenance." "That's not the kind of memory I'm talking about," Camille said with a condescending smile. "I'm talking about judgment, decision-making ability, the kind of mental clarity required to run a business safely and effectively." The conversation was spiraling into territory I hadn't expected. This wasn't just about retirement. They were questioning my mental competence. "You know what I think?" I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. "I think you're both more interested in my inheritance than my well-being." Devin's face flushed red. "That's not fair, Mom. This isn't about money." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "When's the last time either of you visited just to spend time with me? When's the last time you asked about my work because you were genuinely interested, not because you wanted to evaluate my competence?" Camille's mask slipped completely. Don't turn this around on us. We're trying to help you before you make a decision that ruins everything you've worked for." "Like what kind of decision?" "Like whatever scheme Grace and her son have been filling your head with," she said venomously. "I know you've been spending more time with them lately. I know Finn has been working extra hours. They're positioning themselves to take advantage of you." That accusation lit a fire in me that I hadn't felt in years. Take advantage of me how? By making you think they care about you, when really they just want access to your business, Camille explained, like she was talking to a child. "It's a classic manipulation tactic used on lonely elderly people." "Lonely elderly people," I repeated, my voice rising. "Is that what you think I am?" "I think you're vulnerable," she said firmly. "And I think people like the Rourkes see an opportunity." I was shaking with rage now. "Finn has worked for me for 12 years. He's earned every penny I've paid him, and more. He knows that business better than anyone." "Better than your own son?" Devon interjected. I turned to stare at him. "Yes, actually. Better than my own son who moved away and never looked back. Better than my own son who shows up twice a year and acts like my business is some quaint hobby he's humoring." "That's not true," Devon protested weakly. "Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about our new contracts? When's the last time you met any of our employees or clients? When's the last time you showed any interest in understanding what I do every day?" Devon fell silent because we both knew the answer was never. Camille sensed the shift and went on the attack. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Vera. You're getting emotional and defensive instead of thinking rationally. You're letting your feelings cloud your judgment." "My feelings?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean my feelings about the fact that my daughter-in-law thinks I'm a senile old woman who needs to be managed like a child? I think you're a proud woman who's having trouble accepting reality," Camille said coldly. "The reality is that running a business is a young person's game. The reality is that you're not as sharp as you used to be. The reality is that continuing to work at your age is selfish and irresponsible." Selfish? Irresponsible? I could barely get the words out. Yes, because when something goes wrong, and it will go wrong, it won't just affect you. It'll affect your employees, your clients, and your family. We'll be the ones left to clean up the mess. That's when I made my fatal mistake. In my anger and hurt, I said the words that would trigger the explosion I'd been dreading. "Well, maybe you won't have to worry about it. I've been thinking about bringing Finn in as a partner. He's young, energetic, and he actually cares about the business." The silence that followed was deafening. Camille's face went through a series of color changes, red to white to purple, like she was having some kind of medical emergency. "Are you out of your mind?" she finally screamed. "You're going to give away our inheritance to the neighbor's kid?" "It's not your inheritance," I said quietly. "It's my business." And that's when Camille completely lost it. "Face reality, Vera. You're completely useless now. You can't run a business, you can barely take care of yourself, and everyone can see it except you." The words hit me like a physical assault, but what hurt even more was watching Devon's reaction, or rather his lack of reaction. He just stood there, saying nothing, while his wife called his mother completely useless. That silence told me everything I needed to know about where my son's loyalties lay. The house felt like a tomb after they left. I stood in my living room staring at those retirement brochures scattered across my coffee table like crime scene evidence. The words, "completely useless," echoed in my head on repeat, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. But something strange happened as I stood there in the silence. Instead of crumbling into tears like Camille probably expected, I felt something else entirely, a cold, crystalline clarity that I hadn't experienced in months. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had been clouding my judgment suddenly lifted, and I could see everything with perfect focus. Devon's silence had been the final piece of the puzzle. Not once during that entire brutal attack had my son defended me. Not once had he told his wife she was going too far. He just stood there like a coward, letting her tear me apart with words while he mentally calculated his inheritance. I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the Rourke house next door. Grace's lights were on, and I could see her moving around in her kitchen, probably cleaning up after dinner. For a moment, I was tempted to run over there and pour out my heart to the one person who truly understood me. But this wasn't something I could talk through with anyone else. This decision had to come from me alone. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a calculator, working through numbers I knew by heart but needed to see on paper. Blackwood Gardens was worth $1.2 million in assets, equipment, and contracts. We had a steady client base that generated consistent revenue year after year. The business was solid, profitable, and positioned for growth. More importantly, I ran through a mental inventory of everyone who worked for me. Maria, who'd been with me for 8 years and managed our residential accounts. Tom, our equipment specialist who could fix anything with an engine. Jenny, our newest hire, who brought fresh energy and social media savvy to our marketing efforts. Every single one of these people depended on Blackwood Gardens for their livelihood. They trusted me to make decisions that protected their jobs and their families' futures. The idea of handing that responsibility over to someone who just called me completely useless made my stomach turn. At 5 a.m., I made my first call. "Robert, it's Vera Blackwood. I know it's early, but I need to see you today about restructuring my will and business succession plan." Robert Patterson had been my lawyer for 15 years. He'd handled the incorporation of Blackwood Gardens, all our major contracts, and my previous will. His voice was alert despite the early hour. "Vera, is everything all right? Has something happened?" "Everything's fine," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I just need to make some changes. Can you fit me in this morning?" "Of course. How about 9 o'clock?" After hanging up, I made coffee and watched the sunrise through my kitchen window. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, the woman who'd built a business from nothing, the woman who'd raised a son alone while working 18-hour days, the woman who'd earned respect through competence, not sympathy. At 7 a.m., I sent a text to Finn. "Coffee at Murphy's Diner at 8. Need to discuss your future with the company." His response came back immediately. "Yes, ma'am. Is everything okay?" "Better than okay. See you there." Murphy's Diner was nearly empty when I arrived, just the way I liked it for important conversations. Finn was already there, sitting in our usual booth by the window, looking worried. That boy had such an expressive face. Every emotion played out clearly across his features. "Mrs. Blackwood," he stood up when he saw me. "You sounded serious in your text. Am I in trouble?" I slid into the booth across from him and studied his face. At 28, Finn had the kind of steady, honest eyes that inspired confidence. His hands showed the calluses and tan lines of someone who worked outdoors every day. These weren't the soft hands of someone looking for an easy inheritance. "Tell me about your dreams, Finn," I said without preamble. "If you could do anything with your life, what would it be?" He blinked in surprise. "My dreams?" "Your real dreams. Not what you think I want to hear, but what gets you excited when you think about the future." Finn was quiet for a long moment, stirring sugar into his coffee with unnecessary concentration. When he finally looked up, his eyes held a spark I'd never seen before. "I want to revolutionize landscaping," he said quietly. "I've been taking business courses online for 2 years, studying sustainable practices and urban farming techniques. I think we could expand Blackwood Gardens beyond traditional landscaping into something bigger. Keep talking. Vertical gardens for office buildings, rooftop farming systems for restaurants, native plant restoration projects for municipalities. There's this whole movement towards sustainable urban development, and landscaping companies are perfectly positioned to lead it. As he talked, his voice gained confidence and enthusiasm. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos he'd saved from various projects around the country. His ideas weren't just dreams, they were carefully researched, thoroughly planned business opportunities. "I've been afraid to bring this up," he admitted, "because I didn't want you to think I was overstepping. I know I'm just an employee." "What if you weren't just an employee?" Finn's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice even though we were practically alone. "What if I offered you a partnership in Blackwood Gardens? Full partnership, with the understanding that you'd eventually inherit the entire business?" The color drained from his face. "Mrs. Blackwood, I don't understand. What about Devon?" "Devon made his choice a long time ago. He chose Austin over Willow Creek. He chose technology over landscaping. And last night, he chose his wife's opinion over his mother's dignity." I told Finn about the confrontation, watching his expression shift from confusion to anger to protective determination. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "She called you useless?" His voice was tight with controlled fury. "Among other things. But here's what she doesn't understand. I'm about to show her exactly how useful I still am." Over the next hour, I laid out my plan. Finn would become my partner immediately, learning the business side that he hadn't been exposed to yet. I'd introduce him to all our major clients as my successor. We'd restructure the company to reflect his ownership stake and begin implementing his expansion ideas. "But Mrs. Blackwood," Finn said carefully, "are you sure about this? I mean, this is your life's work, your legacy." "Exactly. It's my legacy, which means I get to decide who receives it. And I want it to go to someone who'll honor what I built while making it even better." Finn's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." "Yes," he whispered, then louder. "Yes, absolutely yes." We shook hands across the table, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pure excitement about the future of my business. My 9 o'clock meeting with Robert went exactly as planned. He listened to my instructions without judgment, asked the right legal questions, and assured me that everything could be structured to protect both Finn and the business from any future challenges. "Vera," he said as I prepared to leave, "I have to ask, are you certain about this decision? It's quite a significant change." "Robert, I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The next few weeks became a whirlwind of activity. I scheduled individual meetings with every major client, introducing Finn as my business partner and eventual successor. Their reactions exceeded my expectations. Many had already noticed his dedication and expertise. Several mentioned that they'd been hoping he'd take on more responsibility. "That young man has a real gift," said Patricia Morrison, owner of the largest commercial property we maintained. "He spotted a drainage problem that could have cost us thousands in foundation damage. I trust his judgment completely." Similar conversations played out with client after client. They weren't just accepting Finn as my successor, they were enthusiastic about it. Meanwhile, I worked closely with Finn on the business aspects he'd never handled. Financial planning, contract negotiation, employee management, strategic planning. He absorbed everything with the same focused intensity he'd always brought to the physical work. The transformation was remarkable. Finn stepped into leadership naturally, earning the respect of longtime employees who'd watched him grow from an eager teenager into a skilled professional. His fresh perspective energized the entire team. But the real test would come in 3 months at our annual Client Appreciation Barbecue. It was Blackwood Gardens' biggest public event, attended by clients, employees, city officials, and competitors. It would be the perfect venue for my final announcement. I hadn't heard from Devon or Camille since that terrible night, which suited me perfectly. When the time came, they'd learn about their lost inheritance the same way everyone else did, publicly and permanently. August 22nd arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you grateful to live in Texas. Clear blue skies, temperature in the low 80s, just enough breeze to keep everyone comfortable. It was as if nature itself was celebrating what I was about to do. The annual Blackwood Gardens Client Appreciation Barbecue had grown into one of Willow Creek's premier social events. What started 15 years ago as a simple thank you cookout in my backyard now took place at Riverside Park with professional catering, live music, and over 200 attendees. I arrived early to oversee the setup, but honestly I didn't need to. Finn had coordinated every detail flawlessly. The catering tables were positioned perfectly under the pavilion. The sound system was tested and ready. Our newest landscape installations around the park looked absolutely stunning, a living showcase of Blackwood Gardens' capabilities. Everything looks perfect, I told Finn as we walked through the event space one final time. He was nervous, I could tell. His partnership papers were signed and notarized, sitting in a manila envelope in my car. The company truck keys were in my pocket, polished to a shine. In a few hours, his entire life would change forever. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said quietly, "are you absolutely sure about this? I mean, once you announce it publicly, there's no going back." I stopped walking and faced him. "Finn, in my 62 years on this earth, I've made exactly 3 decisions I'm completely certain about. Marrying my husband Jake, starting this business after he died, and choosing you as my successor." Guests began arriving around 4 o'clock. Mayor Henderson and his wife were among the first, followed by the city council members, Chamber of Commerce officials, and our biggest commercial clients. I worked the crowd like I always did, but today felt different. Today felt like a celebration instead of an obligation. Grace arrived with a covered dish and a nervous smile. She knew what was coming. I'd confided in her the week before, and she'd cried happy tears for her son. "How are you feeling?" she asked, squeezing my hand. "Like I'm about to give the best speech of my life," I replied. By 5:30, the party was in full swing. The barbecue was delicious, the music was lively, and conversations buzzed with the kind of energy that comes from genuine community connection. I kept glancing toward the parking area, wondering if Devon and Camille would show up. At 6:15, I got my answer. I spotted them walking across the grass, Camille in an expensive sundress that was completely inappropriate for an outdoor barbecue, Devon in khakis and a polo shirt that screamed reluctant attendance. They looked like they were attending a funeral instead of a celebration. Perfect timing, I thought. The crowd was at its peak, the local newspaper photographer was present, and I'd just seen Channel 7's news crew setting up their camera near the pavilion. Apparently, our little party had become newsworthy. I watched Devon and Camille work their way through the crowd, shaking hands and making small talk with people they barely knew. Camille's smile looked painted on, and she kept checking her phone like she had somewhere more important to be. When they spotted me near the bandstand, they headed over with determined expressions. Camille's eyes swept the crowd possessively, probably calculating the value of all these business relationships that she expected to inherit someday. "Mom," Devon said, giving me a stiff hug. "Great turnout this year." "The best we've ever had," I agreed pleasantly. Camille air-kissed my cheek. "Everything looks lovely, Vera. Very rustic." I smiled sweetly. "I'm so glad you could make it. I have some exciting news to share with everyone tonight. Oh? Devon's eyebrows rose. What kind of news? You'll find out with everyone else, I said, then excused myself to check with the sound technician. At 7 o'clock, I asked the band to take a break and stepped up to the microphone. The crowd gradually quieted, drawn by years of tradition that said this was when I made my annual thank you speech. Good evening, everyone, my voice carried clearly across the park. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate another successful year for Blackwood Gardens. Applause rippled through the crowd. I spotted Devon and Camille near the front, both looking expectant, probably thinking I was about to announce my retirement and their windfall. 25 years ago, I started this company with nothing but determination, a beat-up pickup truck, and a dream of building something meaningful in our community. Tonight, I want to share some exciting news about the future of that dream. The crowd leaned forward slightly, sensing something significant was coming. I could see Channel 7's camera focused on me, the red recording light glowing like a tiny sun. Building a legacy isn't just about creating something successful. It's about ensuring that success continues with the right leadership. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that Blackwood Gardens has a new partner who will carry our mission forward into the next generation. I paused, scanning the crowd until I found Finn standing near the side of the pavilion. His face was pale but determined. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my business partner and eventual successor, Finn Rourke. The applause started immediately, but it took a moment for the full impact to hit the crowd. Then the cheering began in earnest as people realized what they'd just heard. I beckoned Finn forward, pulling the partnership papers from the envelope I'd been carrying. Finn walked to the microphone with steady steps, accepting the official documents with hands that only trembled slightly. The crowd's enthusiasm was overwhelming. These people had watched him grow up, had seen his dedication firsthand, but my attention was focused on Devon and Camille. Devon's mouth was hanging open in shock. Camille had gone sheet white, her carefully applied makeup standing out like war paint against her suddenly pale skin. Many of you have watched Finn grow from a teenager with a summer job into the skilled professional he is today, I continued. He's earned this opportunity through 12 years of dedication, innovation, and genuine love for this work. I handed Finn the keys to the company truck, the same keys I'd carried for 25 years. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the crowd. That's when Camille snapped. "What is this?" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the applause like a knife. "This is our family business. You can't just give it away to strangers." The crowd turned to stare at her, conversations dying mid-sentence. The Channel 7 camera swung toward the commotion. This was definitely not the kind of attention Camille had been hoping for. I stepped back to the microphone, my voice calm and clear. My daughter-in-law recently told me I was completely useless. Tonight, I'm showing her exactly how useful I still am in deciding who deserves everything I've built. The crowd erupted again, but this time with a different energy. People were looking back and forth between me and Camille, understanding dawning on their faces. This wasn't just a business announcement. This was family drama playing out in public. Camille's face turned bright red. "This is fraud. That business belongs to family. You can't steal our inheritance." "Actually," I said into the microphone, "I can. It's my business, built with my hands and my mind, both of which work perfectly fine." Finn stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I want to thank Mrs. Blackwood for this incredible opportunity, and I want to assure all of you that Blackwood Gardens will continue the tradition of excellence you've come to expect, while embracing new innovations that will serve our community even better." The crowd loved it. People began lining up to congratulate Finn, to shake his hand and welcome him officially into the business community leadership. Mayor Henderson was one of the first, followed by our biggest commercial clients. Meanwhile, Camille was having a complete meltdown. "This is insane. You're all watching a senile old woman make decisions she's not competent to make." That comment backfired spectacularly. These people had been doing business with me for years. They knew my reputation for sharp negotiations and sound judgment. Suggesting I was senile only made Camille look desperate and vindictive. Devin finally found his voice. "Mom, we should discuss this privately. This isn't the place." "The time for discussion was 3 months ago," I interrupted, speaking directly to him. "When your wife called me useless, you said nothing. Your silence told me everything I needed to know about where your loyalties lie." City Council member Patricia Williams stepped forward with a warm smile. "Congratulations, Finn. I've been hoping for years that you'd take on more responsibility. Our parks have never looked better than when you're managing the maintenance." Similar endorsements came from client after client. The community's support was unanimous and enthusiastic. These weren't strangers being manipulated by a senile old woman. These were business professionals who'd worked with both Finn and me for years. Camille realized she was losing the crowd completely. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers," she screamed, grabbing Devin's arm. "This isn't over." But it was over. I could see it in Devin's defeated posture, in the way people were turning away from them with embarrassed expressions. They'd made themselves the villains in a story where everyone else was celebrating. The Channel 7 reporter approached for a quick interview, asking about my decision and the company's future plans. I spoke confidently about Finn's qualifications and vision, while in the background, Devin dragged his still screaming wife toward the parking lot. As they disappeared into the crowd, I felt nothing but relief. The confrontation I'd been dreading for months was finally over, and it had gone better than I'd ever imagined. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my office at Blackwood Gardens, watching Finn conduct a client meeting through the glass partition. He's presenting our new sustainable landscaping proposal to the developers of Willow Creek's first eco-friendly housing development, and his confidence is remarkable. The nervous young man from that barbecue disaster has evolved into a natural leader who commands respect from clients twice his age. The transformation hasn't just been in Finn, it's been in the entire company. We have 3 new major contracts, including that housing development and a partnership with the city to create vertical gardens on downtown buildings. Our employee roster has grown to 22 people, and we have a waiting list of qualified applicants wanting to join our team. More importantly, the company culture has shifted in ways I never expected. Finn's enthusiasm for innovation has energized everyone. Maria suggested a client referral program that's brought in 12 new accounts. Tom designed a preventive maintenance schedule that's reduced equipment downtime by 40%. Jenny's social media strategy has tripled our online following and generated inquiries from 3 neighboring counties. I've moved into an advisory role, handling strategic planning and major client relationships while Finn manages daily operations. It's the perfect balance. I'm still involved but not overwhelmed, still valued but not indispensable. For the first time in 25 years, I'm excited about the business without feeling the crushing weight of total responsibility. The legal aftermath from Camille's threats turned out to be exactly what Robert had predicted. Much noise, no substance. She hired an expensive attorney from Austin who filed a lawsuit claiming I was mentally incompetent and had been manipulated into changing my succession plan. The case was dismissed within 2 months when Robert presented documentation of my thorough planning process, medical records showing perfect mental health, and testimony from clients who'd worked with me throughout the transition period. The judge's final comment became local legend. Mrs. Blackwood has demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking and sound judgment that built a successful business over 25 years. Anyone questioning her mental competence should examine the results she's achieved. Camille's lawyer withdrew from the case shortly after. reportedly frustrated by his client's refusal to accept reality. The frivolous lawsuit cost them nearly $30,000 in legal fees and earned them a reputation in Willow Creek as vindictive opportunists. But the real victory wasn't in court. It was in how the community rallied around my decision. The story spread throughout our industry like wildfire, reaching business owners across Texas who faced similar family pressures. I started receiving calls from women entrepreneurs sharing their own stories of ungrateful children and entitled in-laws. One call particularly moved me. Margaret Chen, who owned a successful restaurant chain in Houston, had been pressured by her son to sell her businesses and move into assisted living. After hearing about my situation, she restructured her succession plan to benefit her dedicated manager instead of her disinterested children. "Your story gave me permission to choose merit over blood," she told me during a visit to Willow Creek. "I realized I was letting guilt and tradition override common sense." These conversations led to something unexpected. I became an informal mentor for other business owners facing succession challenges. My house, which Camille had insisted was too big and lonely, now hosts monthly dinner parties for entrepreneurs from across the region. We share strategies, offer support, and celebrate each other's successes. Grace jokes that she finally has the social life she'd been hoping for when we became neighbors 15 years ago. Our evening walks have expanded to include business discussions, and she's become my unofficial advisor on everything from employee relations to expansion planning. "You know," she told me last week, "watching you rebuild your life after that awful confrontation has been inspiring. You turned cruelty into opportunity." That observation struck me as particularly profound because it captured something I'd been struggling to articulate. Camille's attack had been devastating in the moment, but it forced me to confront truths I'd been avoiding for years. Devon's lack of interest in the business wasn't temporary, it was permanent. His silence during Camille's verbal assault wasn't shock, it was agreement. Accepting those realities hurt, but it also freed me to make decisions based on what was best for the business rather than what I hoped might repair my relationship with my son. Devon did eventually reach out, about 3 months after the barbecue incident. He sent a text message, not even a phone call, apologizing for how things went down and suggesting we try to work something out regarding the business. The message felt calculated rather than heartfelt, like something Camille had coached him to send. I responded honestly, "Devon, I love you, and you'll always be my son. But I've made my decision about the business based on what's best for everyone involved. I hope someday you'll understand." He never replied. The silence hurt for a while, but it was overwhelmed by the joy of watching Finn thrive in his new role. Seeing him implement his vision for sustainable landscaping, mentor new employees, and build relationships with clients reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this business in the first place. Last month, Finn presented me with a proposal that brought tears to my eyes. He wants to establish the Jake Blackwood Innovation Fund, named after my late husband, to provide scholarships for young people interested in sustainable landscaping and environmental conservation. The fund would be supported by a percentage of company profits and would ensure that Blackwood Gardens always prioritizes community investment alongside business success. "Mr. Jake started this company's legacy," Finn explained. "You built it into something amazing. I want to make sure we're always giving back to the community that supported us." That's when I knew beyond any doubt that I'd made the right choice. Finn wasn't just thinking about profits or personal success. He was thinking about legacy in the same way I'd taught him. The values that mattered to me would continue long after I was gone. The scholarship fund launched last week with a ceremony at the high school. Watching Finn present the first awards to 3 deserving students felt like watching my own grandson carry forward family traditions. These kids had the same spark in their eyes that Finn had shown 12 years ago when he first asked to help with the landscaping. During the ceremony, I thought about Camille's prediction that I'd be manipulated by strangers. The irony was perfect. The stranger she'd been worried about was now ensuring that dozens of young people would have opportunities they might not have had otherwise. The business lessons from this experience extend far beyond my personal situation. I've learned that succession planning should be based on competence and commitment rather than bloodlines. I've learned that respect must be earned continuously, not inherited automatically. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to make bold decisions that align your actions with your values. At 63, I'm busier and happier than I've been in years. I mentor other business owners, support community initiatives, and enjoy watching Blackwood Gardens flourish under fresh leadership. My house hosts gatherings that bring together people who share my passion for entrepreneurship and community building. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 2 weeks ago, when I saw Finn teaching his 8-year-old niece how to plant tomato seedlings in the demonstration garden behind our office. She was asking the same kinds of detailed questions he'd asked at 16, showing the same genuine curiosity about how things grow. "Will you teach me about the business too, Uncle Finn?" she asked. "If you want to learn, I'll teach you everything I know," he promised. Watching that interaction, I realized that true legacy isn't about maintaining family control. It's about passing on knowledge, values, and opportunities to people who will cherish and expand them. Camille had called me useless, but what I'd actually done was ensure that my life's work would continue thriving for generations. The words "completely useless" still echo in my memory sometimes, but now they make me smile. They were the catalyst for the best decision I ever made, choosing to invest in someone who saw potential instead of problems, growth instead of decline, and opportunity instead of obligation. At the end of the day, that's not useless at all. That's exactly what a successful businesswoman should do.